you're good to go?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C. Baker. And before we get started, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And of course, this is season 3. So I do invite you to have a look at the 2 previous seasons. There may be some topics there or some experts that have come on that may speak on something that's a bit more to your reality today. So I do invite you to have a look at that. And today I have a great guest. I'm really excited to introduce him. A lot to talk about. I will try my best to keep it under 30, 40 minutes, but I have Greg Linkowski with me. We're, of course, going to talk about his book, but just life lessons in general of things that we wish maybe we would have learned earlier, but that we can pick up our pieces and keep going with life as we get older. So thank you so much, Greg, for coming on. I'm really excited to have you on.
Danielle, thank you so much for having me as an invited guest, and I I'm excited to be here.
Sounds great. Before we get started about everything that we want to talk about today, can you talk to us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today? Because you have a very interesting range of uh, of hats that you wore along the way.
Yeah, Danielle, I it almost feels to me like I've lived just about the equivalent of 2 lifetimes. Uh, I did not intend to write my life story until a certain number of events happened, which some people call life. And I started putting the pieces together. In fact, I started writing my story approximately 30 years ago. And probably the main uh, reason behind me writing my life story is the second of 3 children that God blessed my wife and I with. Um, Now, if you turn the clock back, if you go back 71 years, I I certainly grew up in a um, I guess you can say dysfunctional family. And I like to say, like on a scale from 1 to 10, the level of dysfunction was about an 11.
Mm,
And so there was a lot of chaos. There was the generational curse of alcohol in our family. And I spent my childhood in a little town north of New York City called Yonkers,
mm,
raised as a conservative Catholic. And um, I think there's more. I kind of want to park that right at the moment and fast forward to 1990s. My wife and I, we're both physicians. I'm a retired diagnostic radiologist. My wife of almost 42 years
wow.
is a psychiatrist, and we together, which I'm very proud of my wife Lynn and me, in that we are going to have our 42nd year of marriage coming up in just another week and a half. Um, but I would say the pinnacle, the apex of all my life experiences was being blessed with the children that we have had. And as it turns out, we were blessed with a daughter in 1990 who's very alive and well and has 4 grandchildren.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, uh, she is not very much in favor of me having published my autobiography. God bless her. Um, and that's still a work in progress. I am at liberty to talk about my son, who was born 3 years after our beautiful daughter in 1993. We were blessed with a son who we named David. Uh, for those people out there who have a member of their family with a disability, and you're living with it and striving to do your very best, my hat is off to you. As it turns out, we thought David was a healthy little boy. And for the first 3 months, we everybody thought he was going along just fine until about roughly 3.5 months of age. We discovered that he wasn't making eye contact. And as alarmed parents, and of course, being physicians too, which is a blessing
Yeah.
and also sometimes not a blessing, we took him in for a well baby check, and we watched the pediatrician's face go from his usual countenance to very grave. He had a very serious look on his face.
Mm.
And he mentioned that your son has developmental delay and he really needs to be worked up.
Mm.
That brought us to see a pediatric neurologist urgently. And they did a CAT scan, and we had all sorts of consultations. Um, Seizures began in David's life at about 5 months of age, and they were horrific.
Yeah.
Um, as a family, we're, we were basically in the valley of hell, struggling.
Yeah.
And I can see the tears in your eyes of empathy. And I have to tell you, that was not my choice to see my son in that situation. I have to say, the journey and the blessings that came from David's life were amazing. How did we navigate through it? Well, I would say primarily by the grace of God,
Mhm.
which I'm giving, and I'm hoping this podcast, as well as my autobiography, brings honor and glory to God, because without God in our lives,
Yeah.
our family would have split, and David would have had to have been institutionalized because he was functionally an infant and essentially functionally a quadriplegic, couldn't walk, couldn't talk. And boy, did we go through it.
Mm.
I
I
can
can.
I can remember when he was evaluated by a certain metabolic geneticist who basically said to us, I am so sorry to tell you this, but David's never going to walk, never going to be able to ride a bicycle, and basically has this horrific seizure disorder, which they never actually got a complete diagnosis on, despite genetic testing and even retesting many years after David passed on. Well, we had we had David for almost 10 years.
Mhm.
How did we navigate through it? Well, I mentioned the grace of God, and I also mentioned, well, our faith walk really was pivotal. And
Mhm.
in situations like that, look, I get it. You can become angry and bitter at God and say, why? Why did you do this to me?
Yeah.
Or you can say, God, please help us through this. And we were searching for a miracle. I'll be very, very frank with you. We did everything medically that could be done. And of course, we were privileged in that we're both physicians, so we got the best of care. And as far as physicians, therapists, I mean, we got to meet a whole a whole number of people, including occupational therapists, speech therapists,
Yeah.
uh, physical therapists, special ed teachers, and you name it. We also happened to find a small church that graciously accepted our family and essentially grafted us into their church family. And in fact, my best friend, Pastor Doug, was the pastor of this little inner city church called the Downtown Church. And we also were blessed with coming under a ministry called Johnny and Friends, which is an amazing Christian ministry that was founded by a gal whose her name is Johnny Erickson Tata. She's very well known in the disability ministry. She's a quadriplegic herself and approximately 75 years old as a result of a diving accident. They blessed us with us participating in family retreats, and we learned we weren't alone.
Yeah. I
If you
think that,
look carefully, Danielle, look around you,
yeah,
there's no shortage of pain.
that's so true. And that's such a good point because when you go through like this, and I think that our listeners can appreciate it, is when you start your family, you're praying, you're hoping for that healthy baby, right? So when it's not what you're getting, the first thing that comes to mind is why us? Why, why is this happening? You try to make the best of it, but you really do feel alone. And many families do isolate themselves because they don't want to share, they don't want to put more pressure on the child or on the family that is already going through some pretty big struggles. So I'm curious to know because when we spoke before off camera was um, redefining your role as a father because right you talked briefly about your family history where it might not have been as functional as it should be, but taking on your role as a father there to say okay, we're going by faith, we're going with going through it no matter what. What is what was your thought process of that? Like, how did you see your role as a father in that instance?
Well, before David was born, I, I must tell you, I was very much struggling. In fact, even before our first child was born, I realized I didn't know how to be the best husband. My training was, we did not have good role models.
Mhm.
I found great comfort from going into and participating in my own therapy. And I actually was with this particular therapist for a very long time. He helped me unravel and come to terms with some facets of my personality that up to that time I thought, hey, this is how everybody lives. This is
Right.
and
Yeah.
it wasn't. Uh, I had some real scars of PTSD,
Mhm.
particularly from a childhood experience that happened when I was about 13 or 14. One day, in fact, I start out my book with this. Um, my dad had been drinking heavily, and that had started kind of when I was around, I want to say probably around 8 or 9 years old. Dad who was a World War II veteran and actually was at D-Day in the Navy,
Mm. Wow.
had untreated PTSD. And back in those days, it wasn't even an entity.
Yeah.
So dad unfortunately resorted to alcohol and was very intoxicated one Saturday morning, announced to the family, he goes, I'm going upstairs to kill myself. And he had a loaded 45 caliber gun, which he shot into the floor in the kitchen. And he was dead serious. As he stumbled up the stairs, we successfully charged him, and I wrenched the loaded gun out of his right hand.
Mm.
Um, that
That leaves a mark.
oh,
Hmm.
it leaves a mark. It leaves a very indelible mark.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we had essentially, we never had the support system to work through that.
Hmm.
And believe me, that was very painful.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of baggage. Well, this particular therapist helped me to work through the hurt, the anger, and the profound sadness of having been a victim in so many ways, as were my siblings.
Yeah.
But the process was really long, and I'm darn glad that I went through it because I will tell you, if you fast forward now to this time, my my daughter and and my son, or our daughter and our son, are amazing individuals. And
Mm.
Lynn and I together, I think the single best thing that we did was we became generational change agents for our kids. Please,
Yeah.
a big shout out to parents who are really doing their best for their kids. That is the most important role in life, I believe, anybody ever has. And it's an awesome responsibility.
And it's not easy because
Oh,
changing, cutting out generational patterns, that's what I'm all about. Let's heal so that our kids don't have to heal for us, right? So it's huge. It's a lot of work and you can't do it alone. That's why I appreciate you mentioning that. You really can't. But I do want to ask you though, because it kind of goes with it before we start talking about your book, is in situations like this, especially with your son, and I know with some of the families that I work with, where is it those sleepless nights, those endless appointments where you don't get a diagnosis or you get very vague answers, or
sure.
and you're so like you're in parent mode where you're just like, help us, our
Yeah.
child is. So how do you I'm gonna say this, how do you keep your faith? Because there's a lot of family to say, how can, with everything that we're going through in this period of time, it's hard to remember that there is a higher source somewhere that is supposed to be helping us. What's your thought on that, or how did you overcome that going through it
Well,
yourself?
I will tell you, we did everything under the sun that somebody could do. We went to so many churches and had a variety of different people praying for us. And we were just locked in to the notion. I mean, we were very desperate, and
Mm.
we believed that God had and still has the ability to still be in the miracle working business. God enabled us to persist with that. And we even went to a few miracle crusades. We got to go on stage. As it turns out, I'm pretty good with interpersonal communication. I mean, admittedly, I'm kind of wordy, and I get that.
Mhm.
But we got to go on the stage in front of a packed audience, and there were probably over 18,000 people in the audience. Well, then he asked me, he gave me the mic and said, "Why are you here? And what would you like to have happen?" And my response was, "I would love to see David be able to walk and
Mhm.
talk and show the love of God and all the amazing things that God has done in his life." He asked everyone in the audience who could to stand and prayed a really powerful prayer. The healing that came, the miracle that came, was the sustenance, the ability for us to persevere and to in stay in the game and be be the best people that we have. It didn't he a creative miracle did not happen, but the miracle that happened was our hearts had renewed vigor and renewed
Yeah.
ability.
The
Well,
strength. Yeah.
it turns out at the facility that I worked at that following week, somebody from the medical staff came down to my office and said, "Dr. Linkowski, I saw you over the weekend." And I said, "Really?"
Hmm.
I said, "Where did you see me?" She goes, at the Miracle Crusade. And so I asked her what it was like. And she relayed to me, and I totally believe this, when Benny raised his hands and asked everyone who could stand to raise their hands and pray, in the section that she was in, several people fell back in their chairs and were,
Wow.
quote, slain in the spirit. Now, Danielle, I don't pretend to understand how God moves, but
Mhm.
that to me was plenty of evidence that God showed up.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I am really proud of Lynn. We both don't give up.
Mhm.
You know, it's kind of like my parents instilled that quality in us. And I think of somebody like Winston Churchill, never, I know I'm paraphrasing, never give up.
Yeah. It's so true.
And I just wish for people these days to fight the good fight and realize that there is meaning in life.
Mhm.
And there's a variety of ways to get help, as you know,
Yeah.
support groups, therapy, therapists, uh, church community, mentors who you can develop trust with, who
Yeah.
can help you, who have been there and done that.
Yeah.
But these
That's so
days,
important.
you don't need to do it alone.
So true. And it's so much better because it amplifies, like you said, at the in that miracle, I forget what you called it, that moment where you were on stage, and that also helps other people who are going through things silently. uh,
Yes.
it just amplifies and it reaches everybody. So I think it's great. What would be your one advice for parents or anybody who's going through it and they really think that they're alone in this? Do you have any kind of wisdom or when you're almost at your breaking point and you're thinking, I don't have the strength for this, what would you share with them on that?
Reach out, reach out. Don't allow yourself to go it alone.
Yeah, so important.
It truly is, because
Mhm.
these kinds of things, if you let them, can kill you. And
So true.
they're, life, I've discovered that life is hard.
You're so right. Yeah.
And, but it is worth living. And I think that's probably the single best thing I can say is make sure you take care of yourself in the process. And that includes getting as much sleep as you can,
Mm.
your diet, taking care of your temple, getting some exercise, also doing whatever you can to strike a balance in your life.
Yeah, that's so important. It's so, and it seems simple, but when you're in it, it's not necessarily easy to
No,
say, I'm going to go and get help, but it makes a world of difference. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now, there's so many, this is just a little glimpse of what you talk about in your book, and the book is called Dare to Thrive. Um, do you have it with you? We can show the book.
um,
Oh, no,
I
there it is.
can,
Boom.
yeah,
There it is. I love it. Yeah, so Dare to Thrive, it has great messages, not just for your particular situation, but it's transferable to anybody who's going through some hardships or being tested to their limit. So I think it's great. And where can people reach, or where can people get the book if they wanted to get their hands on it?
uh, very much available on Barnes and Noble and through Amazon, and I think other sources. I think Goodreads. And if anybody wishes to get a hold of me now, this is kind of
I love
homegrown,
it.
but there are definitely ways to get a hold of me, and uh,
I
you know,
love that.
my Facebook is Greg Linkowski M.D. and my Instagram is the Greg Linkowski _ M period D.
I love that.
Yeah, there's so many things to talk about.
There is, yes, and I'll be sure to put all the description in the description, all the ways that they can reach out. But before we wrap it up, because I know I could talk to you, I knew I would be wanting to talk to you all day. But is there anything else that you would like to add? That I'm going to put you right on the spot there. Anything that you feel called to share before we wrap it up?
Well, uh, stay in the game,
Mm.
particularly people who are struggling. And look, marriage is difficult. It's a difficult journey, and I just hope and pray that people hang in there and complete the race that God has called you to,
Yeah.
and don't give up in the process.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that's kind of it in a nutshell.
It is great advice. Yes, it's great. For anybody, I would invite them to get your book so they can hear all the other messages that you have, because of course there's a lifelong journey there that they can get it from. But I invite the listeners as well, if you do want to know more, um, to mention it in the comment, I could have Greg come back and talk more about certain things, but I do invite you to get his book, read the story, read the reflections on it. There's so much more, like you mentioned, there's the childhood, there's his other children as well. There's and then the partnership with Lynn. I think it's beautiful messages there that everybody should get the book, have a look at it. So I want to thank you, and I'll be sure to make all of that, to put all the places where people can reach you or follow you on the description as well, so they can continue.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much for taking the time. I could seriously talk to you for a couple more hours, but we are going to wrap it up, and you are more than welcome to come whenever you want to. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. The difficult things to share, but we all have a story that can help heal others, and I'm just very grateful that you came on today to share yours.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for everybody watching, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. Don't forget to mention it in the comments if you'd like to hear more about Greg's story. We could have him on again and know exactly what to talk about, because there's so much we could talk about. And don't forget to have a look at his work as well. Get his book, Dare to Thrive. Amazing stories in there that we can all learn from. And until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.